dust swirled like 1,000 ghostly fingers reaching for the horizon. The sun was a pale burn on the back of the world, the air thick with heat and the smell of sweat. The sound of hooves cut through the silence, the steady rhythm quickening with every beat. A lone rider, cloaked in dust, tore across the main street of Drywater Crossing. She was a shadow, fleeting, her face hidden beneath a worn scarf, a battered hat clinging to her head. She leaned low in the saddle, her horse snorting in protest as they flew past the saloon, the bakery, and the general store. Her hand was steady on the reins, but her heart pounded. There were eyes on her, old eyes, eyes that remembered the rough days when men fought for bread, when every stolen loaf counted as a victory. Eyes that had seen too many desperados come and go, but never a woman like this. She didn't stop, not even for a moment. Her fingers brushed the back of the saloon kitchen window, sliding the warm loaf of bread into the saddlebag. She knew the risk. She knew the price. But hunger was a sharper knife than any man's law. Her horse's hooves slapped against the dusty ground, ringing through the empty town like a bell tolling for the lost. From the porch of the livery, an old ranch hand squinted, the shadow of a long-forgotten past creeping over his eyes. His name was Jacob Vance, and his days of tracking men were supposed to be behind him. The sun caught the gray in his beard, and the faded blue of his shirt clung to him like a memory he couldn't shake. He watched the rider disappear into the dry earth, a flash of movement, then nothing but the silence of the street. His boots shifted, the sound of creaking leather a sharp note in the stillness. He had seen this before, the quick, desperate flight of a thief. But this time, something felt different. There was a familiarity in the way she moved, in the line of her shoulders, the set of her chin. Something he had once known, maybe loved. Jacob adjusted his hat, stood up from the porch, and quietly mounted his horse. The worn leather creaked beneath him, the reins cold in his hands. He kicked the horse into motion, following her trail, not with the fury of a man who wanted vengeance, but with the quiet determination of someone who had learned to ask the right questions when the world was silent. The hooves of his horse echoed in the stillness. The woman was ahead, no more than a blur against the vast, empty land. But he could feel it. She wasn't just running. She was escaping. And Jacob? He had a feeling he knew just how it felt to run from a past that wouldn't let go. A coyote howled in the distance. The wind picked up, and the world, for a moment, seemed to hold its breath. The hoofprint was fresh, deep in the sand, still rimmed with crumbling edges not yet taken by the wind. Jacob slid from his saddle without a sound, knees stiff as he crouched beside it. One rider, light, moving fast. He ran a calloused hand across the mark, eyes narrowing beneath the brim of his hat. Above him, canyon walls loomed like broken teeth, casting jagged shadows across the trail. The wind funneled through the ravine, carrying with it the sharp scent of sweat and gun oil. A buzzard cried somewhere high overhead. Jacob stood, his boots scuffed stone as he moved forward, quiet and slow, eyes sweeping the trail. A broken branch, a scrap of fabric caught on a mesquite thorn. She was close, and not alone. A voice bounced down from ahead, sharp, male, cracking with laughter. Then another. Told you she'd head this way. Just like her mama. Jacob's fingers slipped around the butt of his revolver. He stepped through the brush and caught sight of them. Two men in dust-covered coats, crouched beside a wide-eyed Clara, her hands bound, her horse tethered to a dead juniper. She didn't cry, didn't beg, just stared at the ground, jaw clenched like a fighter waiting for the bell. The first man, stocky, red-faced, leaned in close to her. "You're lucky, girl. Could have ended up like your daddy. Swinging. But the bounty's better if you're breathing." The second one laughed, then caught movement from the corner of his eye. Jacob stepped into the open. Silence slammed down like thunder. "Easy now," Jacob said, voice low and even. "That girl with you by choice?" The red-faced man straightened, hand resting on his gun. "Ain't your concern, old man. This here's bounty business." Jacob didn't blink. "She stole a loaf of bread and a horse. That make her worth dying over. You law?" "No." "Well then, ride on." Jacob looked at Clara. Her eyes met his, wild but sharp, like a fox cornered but not broken. "I ain't here to take her," Jacob said, "just to see she don't get dragged off by cowards." The second man moved fast, hand to holster, but Jacob was faster. One shot cracked, echoing off the canyon walls like a war drum. The man's hat flew off as he stumbled backward, not hit but shaken. "Next one don't miss," Jacob warned. Redface spat in the dirt. "Ain't worth it." He turned, whistled, and both men vanished into the stone like smoke on wind. Jacob walked to Clara, cut her ropes with a blade worn thin by time. "Why'd you follow me?" she asked. He looked past her to the horizon. "You ride like someone I used to love." She blinked slow. "That woman, she was my mother." Jacob's hand paused halfway to his saddle horn. The wind moved again. This time, it carried the weight of ghosts. The fire cracked loud in the canyon stillness. Sparks snapped into the night air, drifting upward like lost prayers. Clara sat cross-legged, shadows dancing across her face, eyes fixed on the flames. Her voice was calm, but tight, stretched like hide over a drum. "They called him a thief," she said. "Said he ran with the McCree gang, that he burned a payroll wagon out past Junction Ridge. But he didn't. He was with me. He was home." Jacob didn't speak. He just fed another stick into the fire, the flames licking at his hand like they knew the truth already. "They came at night," she said. "Badges without names. Took him right out of the shack. I was 10. I hid under the floorboards." The silence after her words was long and heavy. Wind pushed through the canyon like a sigh, too tired to be angry. "He died in prison," Clara continued. 3 months later. No trial. Just gone. She picked up a piece of bread from the saddlebag, tore it in half, and offered him one piece without looking. Jacob took it slow. His fingers brushed hers. Callous skin against callous skin. "I read his file," Jacob finally said. "Long time ago. The McCree job didn't match his name, not really. But the sheriff needed someone. So they pinned it to the first man who didn't fight back." Clara looked at him then, eyes dark as coal, glinting in the firelight. "And you? What were you?" He took a breath. Let out slow. "Union scout. Then bounty man. Thought I was cleaning the world. Turns out I was just sweeping dirt from one corner to the next." She stared. "You helped catch him?" Jacob nodded, barely. "I follow the trail." I handed over the map. Didn't know who he was. Didn't care. Clara's jaw tightened, but she didn't look away. "And now? Now I do." She threw another stick on the fire hard. Sparks burst up like anger too long, kept quiet. "You think saving me makes it better?" "No," Jacob said. "I think it's all too late. But maybe not for you." She looked away, into the fire, shoulders hunched like a woman, carrying more than a saddle's weight. "I don't know what I'm doing." He leaned forward, his voice a low scrape. "You're surviving. That's more than most." A coyote cried in the far distance. The night settled heavy again. Jacob tossed a worn leather satchel between them. Inside, folded papers, brittle and yellowed. Proof. Letters. Reports. Things I never burned. Your father was innocent. Clara reached for it, hands trembling. For a moment, all she did was hold it. Then she nodded once, slow. "Then saddle up," she said, voice like ash. "We ride at dawn." The fire cracked again, but this time it sounded like something waking up. Bootsteps struck the wooden floor of the Drywater, crossing sheriff's office like hammers. Clara pushed through the door, eyes steady, wind-whipped hair falling into her face. The satchel hit the desk hard, thud of truth wrapped in cracked leather. Sheriff Maddox didn't flinch. He leaned back in his chair, one toothpick twitching at the corner of his mouth. "Well now, ain't you the ghost everyone's been whispering about?" She said nothing, just stared at him, then unbuckled the flap and spilled the contents. Letters, copies, worn affidavits, even a signed confession from a dying deputy, taken down in Jacob's own hand. Maddox glanced once, then twice. His smirk wavered. "I'm not here to plead," Clara said. "I'm here to end it." The room was still. Dust motes hung like smoke in a saloon. Outside, boots thumped against the boardwalk as voices hushed, drawn to the storm brewing indoors. Maddox stood, slow. His hand drifted toward his holster. "Girl, you bringin' lies and threats in my office?" The door creaked again. Jacob stepped in. A hush fell over the doorway behind him as folks caught sight of the man they thought long retired. His coat still carried canyon dust, his face carved with age and regret. But his eyes were clear, sharp as ever. "She's got proof," Jacob said, voice like gravel dragged across iron. "And I'm ready to swear by every word of it." "Jacob Vance." Maddox spat the name like it stung. "Didn't think you still had a spine left in you." Jacob stepped closer, slow. "Didn't think you still had a badge." The silence cracked. Maddox moved first. His ire was halfway up when Clara's shot rang out. One, clean, perfect. The sheriff's gun clattered to the floor. He stumbled backward, clutching his side, eyes wide in shock. He sank into the chair behind him, a dying man surrounded by truth he couldn't bury. No one moved. Then someone whispered. She drew before he did. Jacob bent, picked up Maddox's badge, and dropped it on the desk. "This town don't need a sheriff like that." Clara stood still, gun lowering, breath trembling. She turned slowly to Jacob. He was watching her not like a savior, but like someone proud of who she'd become. "You stole a horse," he said, stepping closer. "Stole a loaf of bread." She raised an eyebrow. "That all?" He touched the center of his chest. "You forgot to take my heart, too." Clara looked at him, eyes softer than they'd ever been. Then she smiled, small, tired but real. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing past the old church bell and rattling the porch signs. Jacob held the door for her, and together, they stepped out into the dust and legend. They didn't look back.